Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Inking Out Loud podcast. I'm your host, Rob Santos, and I am definitely not saying another episode because I totally forgot to look up the spreadsheet and which number episode this actually is. I am joined, of course, by my co-host, Drew McCaffrey.
How's it going, everybody? And it's episode 133.
Is it 133? Okay, I'm holding
Yeah.
him to that. The two of us are continuing with our first-time read of Jim Butcher's acclaimed Dresden Files. Drew, we read Death Masks, Book 5 this week. Would you kindly recap it for us?
All right. Death Masks opens with Harry going on TV once again, but being faced with two new roadblocks. Father Vincent, a skeptic from the Vatican, and Ortega, a vampire from the Red Court. Ortega challenges Harry to a duel, while Father Vincent wants to hire him to find the stolen Shroud of Turin. As Harry leaves the station with technological carnage in his wake, henchmen of Marcone's take shots at him. Things take off quickly, as Susan shows up with her new friend Martin in tow. Harry and Murphy visit the mortician Butters and see a mutilated corpse filled with cursed diseases, and the Denarian demon Ursiel nearly kills Harry. With the help of Michael and the other two Knights of the Cross, Shiro and Sanya, Harry narrowly escapes. He quickly tracks down the Shroud on a boat in the Chicago harbor, but is attacked again by a Denarian demon. Only one of the Shroud thieves survives, Anna, and she also steals Harry's new leather coat. Harry sets up the duel with Ortega. Susan and Harry then go to a swanky art show hosted by Marcone, where Harry hopes to intercept the Shroud. He discovers instead Nicodemus, the leader of the Denarians, and is captured. Shiro finds Harry and offers himself to Nicodemus to secure Harry's release. Susan shows up to help Harry escape and goes with him to the duel with Ortega. As Harry is about to win, however, Ortega cheats, and chaos erupts. Many Red Court vampires are killed, but Ortega gets out with his life, and Harry moves to the bigger problem, stopping Nicodemus and the plague he hopes to unleash using the Shroud. With Sonia and Michael, Harry heads to O'Hare International Airport. They call in a bomb threat to clear out the building, but are still too late. Nicodemus has used Shiro to initiate the plague curse and is escaping on a train to St. Louis. With Marcone's help, Harry and the Knights chase down the train and manage to get the Shroud away from the demons, stopping the curse. Marcone makes off with the Shroud. Harry in turn tracks down Marcone and discovers that all of his criminal undertakings are in an effort to heal a young woman in a coma. Harry gives Marcone, I recently found out that it's supposed to be pronounced Marcone and not Marconi.
Oh, really?
I'm still trying to get that through my head.
Fairly certain I've been saying Marconi this entire time.
Oh,
Damn.
I absolutely have. Anyway, Harry gives Marcone 3 days with the Shroud. As things are calming down, however, Nicodemus has one last trick up his sleeve. He throws one of the cursed coins at Michael's toddler son Harry, and Dresden is forced to take up the coin to save the boy. He hides it beneath his cellar, within a circle, and under cement.
Speaking of pronouncing characters' names differently, you say Nicodemus. I've been pronouncing it this whole time Nicodemus.
Oh, Nicodemus, for
Nicodemus
sure.
as like the demon, demon kind of root there?
It's a real name, Nicodemus.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Oh, I've never heard that name before. I've heard like Nico, as in like a Russian name. Nicodemus is an actual name. Okay, I'm still learning things on the Inking Out Loud podcast.
Nicodemus is a biblical figure. He was a Pharisee.
Okay, I can hear the Demus now. Yeah. Okay, all right. I'm gonna have to make a conscious effort to say Nicodemus in this episode here. I'll start off by saying. Actually, I'll preface this by saying I'm going to do a lot of bitching today. Surprise, surprise to anybody who's heard, any episode of the Inking Out Loud podcast before. But it's going to be mostly my style points. Like when we move on to characters halfway through the episode, I'll be having a lot of great things to say. I loved this book, I promise. Not a lot of those positive things are going to be about Harry, but we'll get to that when we get to that. I want to say I like where we started, with Harry doing what may be the least subtle possible thing to do about being a wizard, just sitting down on a freaking talk show to explain your abilities and your job. Like somewhere deep down inside of us, I know that we all wanted to see something like that. It was pretty cool. This temper tantrum of his, just blasting out all their cameras and the lights, that was epic. It was a great start. But you're still batting 100 for starting his books off well, I think.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. It's a good opening. It kicks off really, really quickly, like I said in the
parking lot
in the summary.
Yeah.
he really doesn't waste any time getting this one going. I liked that this one was a little more complex, that we kind of had two storylines going at the same time.
Hmm.
However, I'm not sure he made it fit together nicely.
Thank you. I
I
think I
thought the
agree.
ending was really rushed in this one. In fact, excuse me. In fact, it reminded me of Ether of Night by Brandon Sanderson.
Really?
It's an unpublished book that Brandon wrote much earlier in his career that I largely enjoyed, but it is a book with two very distinctly different stories and plot lines that don't fully come together, and the ending seems really rushed, where one of the plot lines just kind of gets like wrapped up in a couple of pages and the other one gets the bulk of the focus. And that's really what happened here with the duel. um the duel ends up feeling
Yeah.
totally inconsequential.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so you are gonna say what I'm thinking. Thank you. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I agree with that.
Yeah.
I absolutely agree with that. The duel disappointed me quite a bit, and I'll be getting into that I think in my miscellaneous here. But well, I might be able to bring up if I can make it fit now. I just got to go. I have so much to talk about today. I'll have to find my point here. But to sum it up, yeah, you're totally right. The duel to me felt like it was going to be a larger part of the climax of this book, and it ended up arriving and then being wrapped up so quickly. And we were going off to the real climax, and it kind of felt cheaper for it, a little bit cheaper for it.
For sure. um i- like, I appreciate that Butcher's trying to do something a little more complex with his narratives,
Hmm.
but I don't think he totally pulled it off here. It's and maybe this is just something that I'm gonna have to, kind of read on and see how it goes. Obviously, Butcher started this series as a very new writer, a raw writer,
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
and we're seeing him improve kind of in real time as we're reading through these books. And we're seeing him grow as a writer, and growth and improvement is not always a steady slope. And I think here we're seeing him attempt something that he didn't have the confidence or the writing chops to try 3 or 4 books ago, um, and almost pull it off.
Yeah. Yeah, and we've been saying on the Inking Out Loud podcast now that we are still like far more appreciative, I think, both of us, Drew and I, on with authors that attempt something bolder than they are yet
Hmm.
capable of tackling, rather than a very competent writer settling for the inane. Right?
Yes,
Like I'd still
like,
rather see this kind of thing, and it was still a lot of fun all the way up through and through. But there were still parts I just thought didn't land, and the duel was it. I just found my point about the duel. But it turns out I ranted a little more about what happened in the duel itself, and I want to try and sum this up to make sure I didn't miss anything because it didn't really. I'll explain why it didn't land for me. So all the parties show up. The archive. Listen to me. The archive in Kinsaid show
Kincaid.
up, and they declare that they're there to make sure no one cheats, and then everyone cheats. Like what was this about Ortega drawing his gun, but they can't see his gun? And Harry's like, you can't, they'll hear the gunshot. But they couldn't see that he was doing that already? And the archive had to ask afterwards, like, what happened? Who broke the treaty first? Then we get the revelation that Martin was revealed to have been faking Susan all along just so that he could interfere on Harry's behalf. This all seemed like really colluded. And that's why to me it felt a little rushed. A lot of these ends didn't really tie together to bring it along. They just kind of it was kind of left behind in a lot of
Yes, that's
nebulous
a good way
ways.
to
Like,
put it.
and it to me it didn't feel like it accomplished anything, but strengthened conflicts that were already more than bloody as it was. Like,
Hmm.
it didn't feel like anything happened besides a lot of cool things to see in that duel.
Right. Um, yeah, my other big kind of style issue is that we're 5 books in now,
I know what you're gonna say.
and
I know what you're gonna say.
we
Well,
are still getting like massive page to 2 page long info dumps, explaining Harry's apartment and explaining who Murphy is and
oh,
explaining who Michael
I
is,
didn't know
and
what that was actually.
like,
Okay.
there are there's a lot of stuff that we just know, and he's like, I can understand a little bit of just like a touchstone, like, oh, let's remind the reader of what this is in case they've forgotten. But he's got like paragraphs of retreading, and
No, it,
that like I think this could have been uh, a little more concise, and that may have given more room for developing the dual plot line, for instance.
okay.
Like if he doesn't need to spend 2 or 3 pages at the beginning of the first 10 chapters, uh, retreading the same things we already know, that gives him another chapter or two of room to
Yeah.
develop what was already kind of an underdeveloped plot.
Uh, I kind of get the impression that he's doing this to, for whatever reason, to leave this open for someone who just wants to pick up the series and start with book 5 or something, you know? Like, I feel
Yeah,
like
so
you probably could start with book 5 and still get the story in this one. And so I think that's why he does it. I'm not saying I really enjoy it, but I don't know.
so
I just
there's
go ahead.
for sure something to that. But
Up to a certain point.
he's losing that as the series keeps going on, where I've talked about, some of the tropes and stylistic trappings of hard-boiled detective stories that are episodic, and these have stopped being episodic. Like there is absolutely an ongoing through line on the plot level that has been going since book 3. And it's like he's not entirely willing to admit that they're not episodic anymore, that they have become serial.
Yeah, he wants to play it a little bit of both ways. Yeah,
Yeah, and it's just not working for me.
sure.
And when I say it's not working for me, I don't mean that I disliked this book. I think this book was on the whole pretty good. Um, I don't think I liked it as much as Summer Night or
Really?
Grave Peril, but I probably liked it more than Stormfront and Full Moon.
Hmm. I would say this is my favorite one yet. I really
Hmm.
liked Full Moon. I don't know. I think a lot of people are going to be confused about that one. I really liked Full Moon, and this one took its place. This is my favorite one
Interesting.
so far.
There
Summer
are
Night felt a little
lore
bit chaotic at the
elements.
end.
There are
Sorry, say.
lore elements in this book that are really good.
Yes. Oh my God, I'm so ready for these lore
Yeah,
elements.
like I'm a huge fan of the introduction of the Daenerys. I think Nicodemus is a great villain. Deirdre's
Yes.
super creepy. I'm
Yeah.
very much looking forward to seeing more of them to get a look at the other 26.
Yeah.
And uh,
Yeah.
yeah,
I'm so much enjoying the direction that the overarching story is taking. We've heard demons before. I'm 99% sure we heard angels reference before, but now these players are making their way center stage, and I loved meeting more Knights of the Cross. I loved Shiro, and Michael was we know Michael. I love Michael. Sonya was badass. Nicodemus super cool as a villain, like so much better than Victor Sells. That I almost would have thought this was a different author if Harry's sort of sarcastic, cynical wit wasn't keeping me grounded. The lore you were talking about, but the Fallen, this demon captain and Duriel, the Death Stone from outside, the Capitanim outside of the capital O. This is that all that stuff, Drew. I soaked up like desert rain. Like this is
mhm.
what I want going forward. And with the ending that we got, it looks like I'm going to be getting exactly that. So
Yeah, for
I
sure.
am really excited. Everyone that's been telling us, just wait, it gets better. You are so right. You are so right. And I'm sure many of them are listening to me right now and going, oh my God, he still has no idea. You're also right because I'm excited that I have no idea. I still get to experience the rest of this for the first time. And so I know I said I was going to bitch a lot in my style points. I will be after this. But I still needed to rant about how much I love where the meta plot is going because I'm super stoked for it.
Yeah, that is certainly where the majority of my investment is. Uh, because still, I don't particularly like Harry. I'm not super invested in him
Same.
as a
I'm actually
character.
losing a little bit more like for him, and I'll get into that afterwards. I'm with you there.
Yeah, um, but Butcher's doing a good job filling out the ranks of characters around him. I've already talked about how much I like Thomas and I like Michael. I enjoyed Shiro a lot. I uh, Now that I have a little more context for Molly Carpenter, I really liked her introduction. Um, I like Charity. I
Charity's cool in this
still
one.
mostly like Marcone. Like they're just good supporting characters around Harry. I don't like Susan. I'm we'll get to that in character stuff.
Yeah, okay.
I'm just
Yeah.
kind of tired of that plot line,
Yep. Yep.
but
Cool. Want to get into things
uh,
that we're not too thrilled about? Yeah. I mean, we're still learning some new in-universe magic that's kind of popping out of or at least seemingly popping out of nowhere. At least, like, have we heard the term listening before this with like capital L again? Listening.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
We haven't actually seen him do it though, have we?
I think he did it. He's done it
I
at
mean, I
least
could be
once or
so
twice
wrong.
before. Yeah.
I could be so wrong on this. I just don't remember if we'd ever seen him. I didn't like when he started the listening in this book. I went, "What? Have we seen him do that before? Is this another new thing that's just popping up?" But then we also learned that Harry, he explains to Susan later, to use his words, he's not isn't good enough to craft an enchantment to take it on the road. Apparently, the range of an enchantment is tied in proximity to one's home now. I guess like we've heard before that like an intruder, someone who's not invited into your home, not a house, but a home. That distinction is important. Like their powers could be taken away a little bit. They could leave a little bit of it at the door. But I guess now the enchantment we're learning that the enchantments you cast at home have a direct relation and strength to the proximity to your home. Like we hadn't heard that before, had we?
No, I was also taken a little bit aback. By the way, I just looked it up, and listening with a capital L is brought up in the first book.
Okay. Does he do it
Yeah.
though?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I'll eat
This
my words
paragraph.
on
I
that one. I was
listened. Listening isn't hard to do. No one has practice at it nowadays, but you can train yourself to pay
To be
attention to
fair,
the
the first
senses.
book, that's right. That was what we did with Megan Smythe like months and months before we started back into the series again.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, but no, okay, I'll take the hit on that one. I just didn't remember that, I guess.
Um, yeah. There's still new magic, and I anticipate that will keep coming in as the series goes on. He wants to add more layers to his world building.
Sure.
I didn't have much of a problem with that. I still have a bit of a problem with the like magic interfering with technology thing and how
Being
it
inconsistent at
just
least. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, like it, it never blocks technology when we need technology to move the plot along. Like
Yes. Oh my god, yes.
like phones just always work for Harry. Like
Yeah.
um
Wait,
I don't know. And there's like
It
inconsistency in like he talks about how it's pretty much like pre World War II or post World War II that it really starts messing with things, but then he talks about how it messes with cars and cars are pre World War II tech and like I
yeah.
don't know, there's just a
Helicopter
lot of
communication
inconsistency
systems.
there. Oh yeah, like the helicopter worked fine except for like one small little thing.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Um,
It's a cool idea. I just want to see it be consistent, that's all. It would be better if it was consistent.
yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, do you have any more kind of style points?
Um let's see here. Oh, you know what? You had alluded to this earlier, but I'm going to I'll still talk about that actually in my points about Susan. So I'll actually no, no, I'm gonna say it here. You know why? Because this is again, I was realizing this as I was writing this in my points about Susan that I didn't want to make them all about what she is. I wanted to make them more about who she is. It's kind of my
Hmm.
problem with that character is how much I'm given to talk about one way and not the other. I'll bring this up now because this is about what she is. I'll save who she is for her actual character discussion. Um, that sort of shameless, gratuitous sex scene with the rope,
Yep.
I kind of felt that was a little unnecessary. Did we really need that scene to happen? Or even if we did, do we need that? Do we need to be there for it?
I
Like I had another sex scene listed as my favorite scene in book two. I realize that. I understand that. But this one didn't feel like that one did. That was more of like an exploratory character thing, showing Susan's heart and showing, more importantly to me, like Harry's vulnerability. This was not that at all. This was just kind of disturbing in a few ways. I just didn't like it.
no, I'm with you. I think
Okay.
this felt like Butcher trying to write erotica, and it was very out of place. Um,
Right, out of place. Not to say it was bad, like, poorly
he's
written, but it was out of place.
well, I think it was a little.
I'm just saying not to
I
say
didn't
that. It
think it
still
was
could be.
particularly well written.
I'm not gonna
Like
I'm not gonna comment on the quality of that one.
he's treaded along this line before. We
Yep.
had the dream. Um, like with some graphic sexual detail. Um, but here it was like he just decided, I'm gonna go all the way. Like I'm gonna really get into the nitty gritty details
Yeah,
of
I'm gonna get X-rated on this one.
and it felt very out of place for the book. Like you said, I don't think it added anything. We've already seen this kind of um, uh, internal struggle that both Harry and Susan have regarding her condition. Uh, uh,
You know what? I do want to
yeah, I
clarify.
did not like it.
If I did also add the stipulation, like, did we need to even be there for it, even if it did need to happen? But you know what? If considering where they, I still have to admit, considering where they were in their relationship, deciding that this was officially going to be over, and if it had suddenly happened and we just learned about it instead of being there for it, we'd been like, What?" So I think because of where they both were, if it was going to happen, we would need to be there. But I still don't think it needed to happen. Yeah, I still want to at least make that concession,
Like
even though it
I
doesn't
can
sound like one.
understand an argument for having Harry and Susan lose control and have sex. Um, but it felt very over the top the manner in which he had it happen. Like it really was some like pseudo BDSM erotica
Yeah,
stuff just randomly in the middle of this urban fantasy book.
felt
And
almost like it came out of Jay Kristoff.
like it really what it reminds me of is Laurel K. Hamilton.
Oh,
I
haven't
haven't
seen.
read very much of her stuff, but she has another like supernatural urban fantasy series
Oh,
in a
okay.
similar vein, uh, and and they start off as a lot like the Dresden Files, and then at a certain point, it just stops being like supernatural urban fantasy and just unabashedly becomes erotica, like just smut
It just
romance
switches
books.
genres for one scene
Yeah,
and then continues.
like if you've almost certainly seen the covers. Like if you ever walk into a Barnes and Noble or a Borders or whatever, like
Oh, they're
and
that popular, eh?
roll through the fantasy section, there are the covers that always have like it's like a black cover and then like a
Okay, I haven't
half
heard of this
naked
yet.
person on the cover, like
Huh.
usually tinted red or blue or purple or
Okay.
whatever.
Okay. I'm gonna keep
Yeah.
an eye out next time I find myself.
Um
Well, we don't have Barnes and Noble here in Canada. I don't think. Up here would be like a
no.
Chapters Indigo, but I'll check that out.
Yeah, like just any bookstore. I
Yeah.
remember as a kid, strolling down the fantasy aisle looking for something new to read after, the latest Wheel of Time book, and there was always like a whole shelf of just like half naked people. And it's Laurel K. Hamilton.
Okay.
And that's what
All
this
right.
scene felt like, where I was like,
Okay.
this is not what I signed up for.
Right. Okay. Okay. Shall we get into our characters, my friend?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, let's get Harry out of the way because obviously he's the main character, but also I feel like we're gonna have the most to say about him, and I want to get the negative out of the way first because I want the rest of the episode to be a lot of fun, as much fun as I actually found the book. So it kind of sucks to say this because I've been saying all along that Harry exasperates me. Yet I still enjoyed reading him because he's got a great sense of humor, even if he doesn't even always like see it that way. For me, that balance has kind of started to shift. I'm getting a little more frustrated by him, like mostly with his just his wandering attention. His jokes still make me laugh, but they're not changing, and so they're losing a bit of ground, I suppose. The reasons I have to roll my eyes or get irritated with him are evolving, but the reasons I have to like him, like his morality and his self-deprecating humor, those are staying exactly the same. Susan is back, and he immediately moves all of his mental faculties to his penis. He can't
Yeah.
seem to focus on anything when Susan is around. He takes that with him everywhere. I have a quote here. Fordhill frowned and nodded. What happened to you last night? I told him the short version, all about the art auction and the denarians, but when in this word drew, I
Delighted.
elided
Yep.
over the details afterward, which were none of his business. Oh, really? You mean to tell me you didn't tell the priest about your night of interactive S&M bondage porn with your vampire girlfriend? Like, he even says after this, I'm not particularly religious, but come on, the man was a priest. As if he may have explained that to somebody else who wasn't a priest. Like, no, you would not have explained that. I feel like this moment was just here. It was just another reason for Butcher to remind us that Harry got laid. Like it
I
that
wanna just double check with you. When you read that line, did he say elided or elided over?
let me see here. I can even do it. I might have written the quote down wrong. Oh, it's elided over in my quote here, but I can also do a
Hmm.
really quick book check. I may have just
Yeah, so he
paraphrased it.
misused the word elided.
Did he?
Elided means to like cut out, so you don't need to
Oh,
use over there.
yeah. I
It would
elided
just be
over
I
the
elided
details.
that part.
Ah, yeah.
I
It's
omitted it.
definitely
I cut
over
it
in the
out.
book as well.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Oh.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Like the reason for that line doesn't logically make sense to me. So I feel like we just Butcher wanted to remind us that Harry got laid again. I was like, okay, all right.
right. It, it was funny that you mentioned how you're still laughing at his jokes
There were a
and
couple that
the
made me not.
turn of phrase, but that
Yeah.
his jokes aren't changing. It's the same. And I actually made note of that. In Full Moon on our episode, I specifically noted one line that made me laugh, and it was when he pulled up outside of the lycanthrope's garage, and I don't remember what it was called, but it was something Full Moon Garage or whatever. And he goes, well, well, thank God it wasn't obvious or anything. You know,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
he's used that exact turn of phrase like four more times since then, and I haven't laughed
God.
a single time. Like this one in this book that I noticed was when he's pulling up to Wrigley Field for the duel. He's talking about how it's like it's all empty and it looks skeletal and creepy, and he's like,
Yeah, yeah.
well, thank God it's not too creepy or anything." And
Yep.
I was like,
I
"Yeah,
saw
no,
that.
that doesn't make me laugh at all."
No?
Like,
Okay. I
no,
saw that and I smiled and I was like, it's a good one. It's the same one, but I still appreciate it
yeah,
myself.
he's done it like four times now.
You ruined it for me. Now I'm gonna notice it going forward, Drew. Damn. Okay, I'm gonna bit. I'm back to like the thing I was just bitching about. They leap from the speeding car, and Susan protects Harry from all the bouncing and rolling, and they come to a stop, and Harry's mind is still in the gutter, thinking about how nice Susan feels beneath him, how her legs are placed around him and whatnot. I'm sitting there wanting to yell, "Oh my God, we get it! Susan is really hot. Now, can we please get back to what's happening?" Right? And then back at Michael's house, just before she sneaks away, Harry is with Anna Valmont, and she gets out of bed. She steps wrongly on her leg, and she
Oh,
collapses. But good thing Harry is there to catch her. But I wonder where his hands would land. Of course, he would apparently catch her by her boobs. Hands off, she growls. And he even needs to add the extra detail. I jerked my hand off of something pleasantly firm and smooth or something. I was like, uh,
yeah, like
it's all the time. It's
I don't remember the actual wording there, but whatever the wording was made
pleasantly
it
smooth
clear
and
that
firm, I think.
he did intend to grab her by the boob, and it's like dude, that's so just like creepy. Like, come on, man.
It doesn't say he intended it, but you get the feeling that like this just sort of happens because he's Harry Dresden. It always happens this way. I don't want to give the impression that I always bitch about this kind of thing. I promise I'm not one to bitch about this kind of thing because of about of the subject material. But it's come to my attention now, and so I am seeing it everywhere. It doesn't feel organic anymore. It feels like we need one or two moments every chapter. It bothers me just because it's not subtle. Robert Jordan was subtle about it. Jim Butcher is a great at many things, but I don't think this being subtle about Harry being a horn dog, that is not one of them. It feels like he's adding it as a special part of his recipe, and it just stands out so much.
Yeah, yeah. I do want to say something nice about Harry.
Okay,
Um, I really enjoyed his interaction with Molly. I thought
did you?
that scene had some like surprisingly good, almost like parental kind of dynamics to it, where
Uh,
like there was an understanding between them that like that she's clearly missing from her parents. She has to hide who she is from her parents, and Harry was understanding of it. Um, I liked that.
um, okay. Next question. How old is this girl?
She's like 14, I think.
14. I got the impression that she was 14. That's kind of why I actually wrote down the scene in my style, but I decided not to talk about it because we were kind of already past. But it kind of disturbed me, this scene. I mean, she's just making innuendos left and right, and obviously Butcher's having fun making Harry uncomfortable with
Well,
it.
Yeah, I mean, have you
But
met a 14-year-old?
yeah,
They're
I
always
wasn't
like,
quite like that at 14. At least not to adults when
I
I was
mean,
14. With my friends,
I
sure.
well, so I think that's where I'm getting at with the dynamics of this scene is that because he's not her dad or her mom, but is an adult, she's desperate for adult like validation, where she feels like she's becoming an adult as a teenager who has hit puberty, like, and
Yeah,
has reached that age where it's like, I'm starting to not be a kid anymore.
right.
But she's not getting any of that sort of respect, and so she's desperate for it, and that's why she's pushing with
Okay.
Harry, because she
I
wants him to view her as an adult, and he's meeting her on that middle ground to an extent, and then she goes over the edge as teenagers are wont to do, and he's like, okay, like, um
you know
I was at least glad that um there wasn't the same Harry leering at teenagers sense with that scene as we
why all
got
the
with
kids had
the
grown.
alphas.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Like when he's talking about like this teenage girl in a bathrobe, and he's like, "Wow, she really fills out that bathrobe." Like,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, uh, there wasn't that, so that was good. It
Well,
really felt like a surrogate father daughter kind of
I
situation.
I feel like I would have appreciated that aspect of it more, or at least I should say be able to appreciate that aspect of it more if she had been more of a part of this book from beginning to end, and maybe if this was something like a hint or a little joke here and there, but this was she was Molly was concentrated inside one single chapter, and we got like a whole book worth of her trying to be a grown up in one scene, and it was
Hmm.
just beat after beat after beat. Like, um, I had listed it here. That like, okay, she changes her skirt in front of him, and he's got to turn around, and he notices her stash her bra, I think it was, and she makes fun of the handcuffs on his wrists, and alludes to them being fun time handcuffs over the other kind of handcuffs. She realizes that the word sex makes him uncomfortable, and she has a field day with that. And she even suggests that Harry tie Susan up. The irony of that actually happening later, that's not lost on me. But I was like, come on, this is one single conversation where all of this happened, and I feel like this could have been interspersed a little more. We could have like had Molly along for the journey a little more. It felt too concentrated for me.
Hmm. Okay. Um, I don't feel the same way, but I can understand where you're coming from with that. I admit I was surprised we didn't get more Molly than we did.
I thought she
I
was going to be
thought there
along for the
was going
ride.
to
Yeah.
be more,
Yeah.
but she was really only in like one more scene towards the end of the book,
Hmm.
um, uh, where she and Harry kind of have this little like sarcastic, you know, moment. Um, but and maybe I'm letting like my future knowledge tint things a little bit because
I
I
mean,
know
future.
that Molly like is more of a character in the future because
Oh,
the
she's.
first
Oh,
the
that's right.
first yeah Dresden I ever read was a short story from Molly's point of view. And granted,
I,
I do not remember anything from that story. All I remember is there's like a scene where she goes into a vampire court
that's
for
right. You
like
and
a
Veronica
dinner
talked
party
about
or
this,
something.
didn't you? That's right. I
Um,
totally forgot about this.
yeah, like I don't remember anything from from that, which is good. Like I'm glad I don't. But I
Okay.
do know that she is more involved as things go on, and
Yeah.
so I'm just glad that that foundation was built. To me, it felt like in a kind of heartwarming way.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Um, another thing about Harry that kind of disappointed me here. I'm not done bitching about Harry yet. Sorry,
Oh
everybody.
boy,
Sorry, everybody.
I was
But it's
trying to make a positive point about him.
yeah, I do. Hey, I have a very positive point as my last Harry point, so make sure I don't
Okay,
forget
okay.
that. Um, but I was still a little disappointed with Harry when Susan showed up and he starts doing like the psychotic insecurity thing over Martin. That
Mm.
the immediate
Mm.
dismissal,
Hmm.
the contempt right away, the mocking to his face and behind his back when he's just talking to Susan about Martin, the numerous times that Susan is trying to talk to Harry and he just keeps plowing over her words like, nope, nuh-uh, he's stupid. I can't believe you choose him. He he stopped acting like an adult as soon as Martin
Yeah.
entered the equation every time, and he just turned into an unreasonable and petty teenager. I was really not
I
impressed with
I
that.
actually had a note from that chapter where I said, "Well, I guess Harry's just a teenager now."
Yeah, yeah.
Like
I acted like that
almost
when
your
I was
exact
16,
same
17,
words.
18 years old.
Yeah,
Yeah. I like
he does not read like a guy. He's in his like what, early mid 30s, right?
I got the impression he's in early 40s,
Early 40s.
but I
Man,
could be wrong.
I'm
He
pretty
seems
sure
a little
they've like said his age, but I just forgot it or didn't pay enough attention.
yeah.
Anyway, but like he regressed like a solid 20 years in that scene. Like
Yeah. Yeah, at least. Oh god. And this weakness and almost willful blindness he has where any woman in his life is concerned. I'm so tired of it. As he has Anna Valmont cornered, she, and I quote, slumped her shoulders in defeat. And I read that line. She slumped her shoulders in defeat. And I stared at it for a few seconds and I immediately thought, no, no, Harry, don't, oh, for sake, just this once, don't, please don't fall for it. And sure enough, he thinks about whether she should have had someone with her friends with her, and how vulnerable she is now, and how guilty he feels about it. I was like, oh God. And then, of course, she clobbered me, and I'm left holding my e reader, like, of course she did, you dumbass. Like, what are you, how are you still not picking up on this? How?
um yeah, I kind of liked Anna Valmont.
Oh, I like her as
I
a
hope she
character.
comes back. I definitely hope she comes back.
As a
But yeah,
character, she's totally
it
fine.
did
I
drive
like
me
it.
nuts how he like repeatedly. He just never learns.
He just
The guy's an idiot.
he's so like. All right, I want to talk. I want to say my good thing about Harry. I
Well,
want to say my good thing.
I have a good thing too. I have one more
Okay,
good thing about Harry.
want to start?
His interactions with the archive.
Yep, sure. Okay.
Uh, Once again, like I don't know, maybe this is just where Harry needs to go. Like maybe he needs to have a kid, but like when he has opportunities to be a role model, to be a father figure, that's when he's
Yeah.
at his best. When it's with the alphas,
Well,
when it's with Molly, when he's
yes.
interacting with the archive,
Yes.
like that's
Maybe
when
he
Harry's
needs.
at his best. The
Yes.
problem is actually becoming a father because that involves women, and Harry is an unmitigated idiot with women.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I totally agree. I think with every single thing you just said, he's at his best when he gets to be the grudging but you know respectable parent. Yeah.
yeah.
It, the positive thing I wanted to say about Harry is he had a really insightful one liner for me, and it was a line that actually wasn't meant for comedy for once, and it really stood out to me. And I wonder if he might have been quoting someone actually, because we don't get the context with his allusions, but there's a more there's a moment when Thomas the vampire asks Harry, "Hey, like why?" He wanted to make the duel fair, and Harry replies, "Life would be unbearably dull if we had the answers to all of our questions." And I like that. And I know I've heard that sentiment before. I've also heard it in fantasy books before. It's not a particularly original idea, but for some reason, coming from Harry Dresden, who has so many questions that frustrate him, I don't know. It hits different coming from Harry Dresden, and I really liked that line. Life would be unbearably dull if we had the answers to all our questions.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
like that. Oh, and
That
he
is good.
also he had another really good one. I think it was Michael talking to Harry, and Michael's like, "So did Ortega refuse to cancel the duel?" And Harry's like, "He made an offer I couldn't excuse."
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
so good. That is so good. I like that. His one-liners are still on point, but that's basically everything I wanted to say about Harry at this point.
Okay. Who do you want to move on to next?
Susan, I
Okay.
only have 1 point. That's Susan, really.
Uh, okay.
I stopped
Go on.
when she showed up. I actually like when she first came back. I stopped before we even got that scene. As soon as I recognized her, I wrote on my phone, "You know what? If she's stronger and more importantly smarter, I'm totally okay with Susan being back." Like we had a whole novel without her in Summer Night. We got to see Harry and Murphy do some more bonding, even if it's at the time it's still understandably not the right one. I don't want Susan to die. I just don't think that she works with Harry in the way that Murphy does. So when Susan, like with Susan, Harry just turns into this lecherous old dog who can't think with anything besides his wang, and we get to see that very explicitly in this one. But Susan has clearly herself been up to some of her own good in Honduras, and she's in Honduras, right? At least in South America.
Guatemala?
What? Oh. The
I thought she was in Central America.
oh, she might have. Oh, I might have got that completely wrong actually. But like
I may be wrong
the
too. I'd have
Fellowship
to
of
look
Saint
that up.
Giles that she's a part of, like
Hmm.
the part humans that are like rebelling against the Red Court. Like I love that. I feel far better about her as a character now that she's found an even greater purpose and has devoted herself entirely to it. Like Harry and Susan feel like two people whose relationship is so animalistic that it can only work if neither one has it in their top priority, and I want to see both of them move on to bigger and better things. I'm kind of hoping Susan's gone for good, but I like where she ended up, and I like that she has this bigger cause to fight for, and so because of that, I hope she continues on it on
Yeah.
her own way and doesn't come
You know,
back.
I hadn't thought of it in those terms, but I agree with you. I thought you put it really well earlier when you said there's a hard difference between what Susan is and who Susan is.
Yeah, yeah.
Like it's
This was who she is. That's why I saved it for the Susan
yeah.
discussion, right?
Um so much of Susan has just been what she is in relation to Harry. She
Mhm.
starts off as, she's sort of this media conduit. Like she's Harry's outlet so that his stories can make it out to the right people who actually pay attention to that sort of thing. And
Mhm.
then he's, or she's his hot date, his squeeze for a little while, and then she's the person who can get Harry to be a little vulnerable. And like it's all everything about her is just what can she do for Harry? And now she finally has agency independent of Harry. Like
Yes,
I'm okay
yes.
with it if this isn't the last we see of Susan, but I really hope the Harry Susan romance plotline dies here.
100% agree. Thank you. I actually have a prediction about Susan coming later, so I also think we're going to see
Ooh,
more of her. But I absolutely agree. I absolutely agree with what you said. I
yeah,
want to see it on her own terms, doing her own thing, and not because of something that Harry needs.
okay.
Cool.
Um, yeah, I don't think I had anything else about Susan.
Same. Same. Michael. Talk about Michael,
My man.
my man. Yeah, big fan. Drew
Yeah,
McCaffrey.
I still like Michael a lot.
Yeah.
Um,
Same.
he's so a couple episodes ago, I went on a bit of a rant about the way Catholicism was um, represented in these books, or at least an aspect of Catholicism that was represented.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think Butcher did a good job of toning that down in this one, um, and spent more time on like actual Catholic philosophy rather than trying to like play off Catholic stereotypes as jokes.
Would you
Uh,
think it's perhaps because we got Shiro and Sanya, so he could like
so
divide his representation a little wider?
no, because neither of them are Catholic.
Oh yeah. Well, okay.
Um,
They're not. They're both Knights of the Cross, though.
right, but Shiro is I think he said he's Baptist. Um,
Okay.
and then Sanya was
Is
a self-professed agnostic,
Yeah, yeah. I remember that
and
conversation. That almost made my favorite scene. Sorry, I'm cutting you off here. Continue.
um, but there were more opportunities in this book for Michael to really talk about Catholic philosophy and Catholic attitudes toward sin and toward mistakes that people make, and really driving home this idea of mercy, which is a core belief in Catholicism. The idea that everybody will make mistakes at some point, but God is merciful if you desire His mercy, and uh, so we have a couple of pretty key scenes in the book where that comes to the surface, and I think, yeah, the scene with Cassius is the major one. And in fact, the scene after that, when Harry leaves after destroying Cassius with the
Yeah, that
baseball
was.
bat, and even then, even through Michael's disapproval and Harry's kind of jokingly like, "Oh, you think God will forgive me?" And Michael's like, "God's mercy's always there," you know. Like Harry's trying to sort of play it off as a an angry joke, but Michael takes it seriously, and I really really liked that. I think Michael has pretty solidly taken over the role of my favorite character in the series at this
Yeah,
point. Like he was
nice.
already kind of right on the cusp there. Like I really liked Thomas. I still really like Thomas. Thomas
I'm
is
not a big
entertaining as
Thomas fan,
hell.
but I can see why people like him.
Yeah, he's over the top, but he's entertaining. But you know, and I like Murphy and I like I, don't know, I like a few different characters. I talked earlier about the strength of the side characters, but in this book, I thought Michael really took a stranglehold on that crown for me.
Ah, yeah, no, he was Michael was really cool. Again, I don't see Michael being anything but badass, but to me, and this took me by surprise because I was such a big Michael fan before. I still feel like for me, he was still like he was outshone by not one but both of his brothers in arms here. Like meeting Shiro and Sonya again, like both that was awesome. And Michael still plays a brilliant counterpoint to the aging Japanese and the strong silent Russian. Like that's that the dynamic, and then the whole like wholesome homegrown American, righteous American about Michael. I still it paints a perfect picture. Like I still think though, Michael needs to consider one of two things: either a career change, and I'm not talking about carpentry, or, and this hurts me to say it, leave his family. Because like being a literal hand of God, it's a great way to make numerous and deadly enemies. This is exactly the kind of job that really, really, really should not be following you home. And yet somehow we have been to Michael's house like every book so far since we've met him. Like there's always something or someone showing up at his house or taking refuge at his house. Like this dude has a family. Sooner or later, the wrong person or thing is going to learn about Michael's house. In fact, it happened at the end of this last book. Nicodemus shows up. I almost said Nicodemus again. Side question also, Drew. I can
Yes.
see why Harry would need to hide if, temporarily what happened to him with the coin, but surely he's not just going to keep his mouth shut about the fact that Nicodemus clearly knows where Harry's family lives, right? Because he hasn't said anything to Harry yet at the end of this book. Or to Michael, I should say. He's like, I'm going to hide this, that this happened to me with this coin, but you would think he would
The
still
way
say,
the way you phrase that makes it clear to me that you do think Harry is going to keep his mouth shut about
right,
it.
he's going to obviously need to keep his mouth shut about the coin. Okay, because
Yeah.
that's going to make him a target, or the people are going to. Sure, that's a whole barrel of worms, but he still has to tell Michael, "Yo, this demonic creature knows where your family lives. You've got a GTFO, right?" And how is he going to explain that to Michael without saying, "Oh, by the way, I saved your son's life"? Michael's going to be like, "What? He just showed up and tipped his hat to you and drove off?" I don't know. I just wanted to see where you thought that was going. I should have saved that for
No,
predictions,
I
actually.
very much think he's keeping that all under
Oh
wraps, and
God,
it's
that
gonna
is such a shitty
absolutely
thing.
come back to bite
This
him.
Nicodemus knows where his family is, and he's gonna keep that secret. Was he gonna pay for them to take a vacation somewhere? That excuse is gonna run thin. I should have saved this for predictions, but we're still on Michael. I love Michael. That's kind of why I'm making such a big deal about this, because I don't want anything to happen to Michael's family, especially with that scene. Well, I mean, not like it would have been less before, but with that scene we had with Charity, like we got such a closer look at that family dynamic in this book, and I'm so concerned for them because of Harry's stubbornness.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
I'm sorry. That's all I wanted to say about Michael. I'm still a big fan. Still a big fan.
No, that's good.
Okay.
Uh, let's see who else. What do you think of Ortega?
Ortega? I was just my thoughts on Ortega are kind of wrapped up in this bit of disappointment I felt over the final duel.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Like I
Like
thought he was gonna be a much bigger threat.
he had potential as a villain, but got so thoroughly overshadowed by Nicodemus and the rest of the Denarians. I was like,
Yeah,
and then he gets like nuked at the end of the book.
yeah.
And I mean, I'm not sure. I'm not. I'm not sure he's actually dead. You know,
Oh no,
that
he's probably
traditional,
not.
you know, if there's no body, don't trust it. But he just ended up being quite underwhelming, especially in comparison to the other antagonists in the book. He
Yeah.
wasn't as threatening even as like Mab or Leah, like some of the previous antagonists. He didn't even come off as threatening as Bianca, I thought.
Really? I didn't take Bianca particularly seriously, but it could just be me.
I mean, like, she had. Bianca at least outsmarted Harry thoroughly and trapped him, you know, in that scene in Grave Peril with, you know, at the party where she gets Amarachius and she's going to destroy the sword by killing an innocent person, and like, and
Yeah.
she traps Harry and forces him into like starting the war, like, you know, breaking the accords or whatever it was. Ortega never outsmarted Harry. Like, the closest was like, oh, I'm gonna have this underhanded thing where I'm gonna pull a gun on you. It was like, eh.
You're right. I didn't feel any of that until the point when the duel started. I took Ortega so seriously as a threat until the duel started. And then for
Yeah,
some reason he just turned into a massive disappointment. I was like, "Come
right,
on, really?"
right, yeah. Um,
I do love the I will say I do love the idea of Ebenezer using that Soviet satellite to wipe out Broski's compound in Honduras.
yeah, yeah.
I I will say though, that just can't happen. And I know I'm about to hear a litany of Rob. It's freaking magic. Why do you gotta do this every time? But a half-mile wide crater from satellite debris. Come on, come on. It's a satellite. It's not a
oh,
freaking
oh,
asteroid.
I very much view that as they used the satellite coming down to mask literally magically nuking his.
Okay, because I would say this sounds like nuclear bomb level energy. That's literally my next sentence.
Yeah,
Okay.
my impression was that they actually launched a magical attack on his uh, property and used the satellite, like made the satellite fall right there to cover it up. Because
Ah.
the fact that like it's so precise where they left the village alone right next door, like I don't know.
And then it starts
Uh,
a big controversy in world that nobody knows about. Satellite
yeah, I
flames can't melt
definitely
steel
saw it
beams.
as
Yeah, yeah. Okay, okay,
a
okay.
cover
I,
up
I
thing.
like
Like
that
it
explanation more.
reminded me actually. Oh, how do I say this without spoilers?
Spoilers for.
Blade of Taishal. The end of
Okay.
Blade of Taishal.
Uh huh. Uh huh. Uh huh. Okay.
With a certain person's estate that gets that it
Yep.
reminded me a lot of that.
Yeah. I can see
Um,
that.
anyway, other characters. Shiro. What about Shiro?
I love Shiro. Super
Yeah,
badass. Not
he.
surprised that he got the ending that he did. I mean, it felt a little archetypal, if I'm being entirely
Yeah,
honest, but I
no.
was okay with it.
It
I was
was
to-
so. It was telegraphed. Like the first scene he's in is everybody's talking about how like you've gotten old and slow, and I'm like, okay,
yeah.
well he's clearly gonna go out like a badass.
Yep,
Like,
I was okay with it. The older like
yeah,
sensei type, very traditional, finds a way to sacrifice himself for his pupils, and yet still finds a way to turn it into another lesson for them.
yeah.
Shiro is just yeah, yeah. I have no problems with Shiro as a character. I loved it.
Like, look, tropes are tropes. Some tropes are tropes for a reason because
Yep,
they're good.
yep.
This is a good trope. I
I
love
loved
this
it.
kind of stuff.
I loved it. I loved it.
What did you think of Sonya though?
I love Sonya too. I love all three of
Okay.
these dudes: Michael, Sonya, and Shiro. I mean, Sonya like with his thoughts with his conversation. I loved picturing a Russian accent on this guy. It was just he felt like a solid, you know, dependable blade at one's back, proverbially speaking. Like I felt good that Sonya was there going into battle with Harry and not with Shiro, pardon me, with Marcone. Like I was like, cool, all right. I love the fact like that Shiro's on the left side there. I feel great about it. He was
See,
cool as a character.
I was a little underwhelmed with Sonya. I thought
Okay.
that like because he just he got his ass kicked every fight. Like
Yeah,
he
but
got injured in every fight.
He's
And
not
like,
Yamcha though. He's still pretty.
I don't know.
Um,
It's actually funny you brought up Yamcha. Like he totally reminded me of Yamcha, and obviously not with the same extremes of Dragon Ball where people can die and get resurrected all the time,
yeah.
uh, but it was like he just got totally overshadowed by Shiro for me, where Shiro and Michael got to be the badasses, and Sonya was like, okay, well, we need all three of the knights involved here, but he's just gonna like get
Oh, like a red
wrecked
shirt.
early in every fight, and I hope, I expect Butcher will spend more time developing him, and to be fair, there's the whole thing about how he's the youngest. He's got a lot to learn still, that kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Um, but I was a little underwhelmed by Sonya, so I hope there's better for him in the future.
It's funny that we just we we had brought up Dragon Ball Z because that's not even the only Dragon Ball Z reference I had in my notes, believe it or not.
Oh,
My
really?
my next note was about Nicodemus. Nicodemus, damn it! I'm gonna keep doing that. I'm just gonna keep doing that. I thought he was such a better villain than Victor Sal's. Like, yeah, and Victor Salz is going to be my metric for bad guys, I think, for the rest of the series. And this is where I brought it in. It's going to be like power levels in DBZ, or maybe Dragon Ball Z Abridged for anybody who's seen it. They measure fighters by number of Raditz in terms of their power. I think I'm going to start measuring villains by number of Victor Cells.
Oh my
At least
gosh.
number of Victor Cells that I can take seriously. Broski in book 2. Fenton? Yeah,
Denton.
failed Dale. Shit, I
Denton.
can't remember his name. Denton. These are like 3 Victor cells worth. I wasn't too impressed by the undead sorcerer in book 3 though. I don't even remember his name.
Oh.
The summon the demon.
Krasov?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Kra-
The queens in the last book were like 10 Victor cells each. I was able to take them seriously, but Nicodemus, dude's
Dude,
like
what the heck is
500
the
Victor
guy's name
cells.
now? This is gonna drive me nuts. Trying to
Kravos?
remember. Kravos. Yes, Kravos.
There we
Thank you.
go. I always
I
get mixed
had
up
I
between
had the
him and
S and the V.
Kratos.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Kravos, yeah,
um.
that's how I remembered it there. But like Nicodemus, that's like 500 Victor cells worth of threat in my books. Like I am thoroughly intimidated as a reader by
Oh
Nicodemus. I'm
yeah.
scared for Harry in ways that I haven't been with the Red Court or the White Court or even Leah the Godmother. Like Nicodemus, the fallen, the ally of Enduriel, captain of Lucifer. Like these are the threats that I can't wait to see going forward, and I'm so spooked by them.
Yeah. I gotta say, I was surprised. I didn't expect there to be this sort of heaven versus hell kind of imagery in the conflict.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm not displeased by it. I lap this stuff up. Like
Heh.
my favorite parts of Supernatural are seasons 4 and 5 when the
Yep.
heaven versus
Yep.
hell like
Same.
really kicks off.
The 2 best
Um,
seasons of Supernatural, 100%.
yeah, I just for some reason didn't expect it. I thought this was going to be a more like mundane Supernatural.
I'm right there with you. I am so there with you.
Like like I definitely thought we were going to have, at least for a while, the vampire war be the main thing. But after this
I was
book, the vampire war, it seems so inconsequential.
Yeah,
Like,
and I'm glad for that because I'm tired of vampires by now. I realized this came out
yeah, yeah.
18 years ago, but now in
Dude, I'm
2021,
telling you, it was the trends. It was the trends.
in 2003, which is when this book came out, that was the trend, and I would probably have loved it back then. It's not Butcher's fault that I'm pissed off about vampires and so jaded
Right.
on vampires in 2021. That is nothing
Yeah.
like Butcher's fault, but
I'm
I'm
just
glad that yeah.
I'm just waiting to see if we get to a book coming out in like 2009, 2010, and
Oh
suddenly
no.
zombies are a big threat.
Yeah, really. Oh god. Or yeah. Um,
But
I think those are all my character points. I'm ready to go into miscellaneous, which is actually kind of a long list. What about you?
yeah, that works for me. I don't have a ton of miscellaneous points, but I have a couple.
Actually, I've already brought up half of them previously, just in the natural flow of conversation, so I don't have too many either. But you can start us off. Go ahead, man.
Okay. Well, so we were just talking about Nicodemus,
Yeah, we were.
and I wanted to point out. I mentioned earlier that Nicodemus is a biblical figure. He was a Pharisee, uh, he only appeared in the Gospel of John. And he stands out among the Pharisees because most of the Pharisees were antagonistic toward Jesus, but Nicodemus like approached Jesus to learn. And in fact, after Jesus' death, Nicodemus is the one who brings the embalming spices, and like I think it's myrrh and I don't remember. I really should have written this down.
I am
Um,
learning everything that you're saying now.
but
I have never
I
heard this
thought it
before.
was fascinating that so Nicodemus is a saint. Um, in the Eastern Orthodox Church and the Catholic Church, Nicodemus is recognized as a saint.
Oh,
But and so having him be an I mean, not that I'm saying that this Nicodemus is supposed to be the Pharisee from the Bible, but just that he used the name a saint, becoming the vessel or partner of Satan's captain. But on top of that, so the Shroud of Turin, of course, is supposed to be the embalming cloth that went over Jesus' face.
yeah.
Nicodemus in the Bible was the one who brought the embalming materials to the tomb and helped Joseph of Arimathea lay Jesus to rest. So
Right.
there is established biblical connection between Nicodemus and the Shroud.
Huh. Sounds like there's a whole component of this series that I am missing just because I really don't have any experience with like Christianity. That's
Now, I'll say there isn't a,
at
a
least like something
ton
to be
of
appreciated. Maybe not like context that
sure,
you would have, but
yeah,
just something to be appreciated.
not as much even as like the gap cycle, which was
Oh,
very overt with some of its Christian
right.
symbolism, and is
Oh,
certainly nothing like the Book of the New Sun, where
interesting.
there is basically every human character in the Book of the New Sun is named after a saint, and
Really?
sometimes when you start digging through the layers, you can
Okay.
one of those layers you can dig into about the character that will reveal motivations or hidden depths to them comes from connecting the character to the saint and looking at what that saint did in their life,
Damn.
and then you can extrapolate that into the narrative of Book of the New Sun. Gene Wolfe was a friggin' genius.
Damn.
But yeah, there's nothing like that going on here.
Yeah.
uh, but I did find it interesting because I'm always on the lookout for that kind of thing.
Mm, nice. Hey, how'd you feel about how Harry, like how I should say specifically how Harry ended up solving a large part of the mystery here? Father Forthill just happens to be in a t-shirt and doing some carpentry, and Harry notices that he has the freaking Eye of Thoth tattooed on his arm, and he learns that Father Vincent supposedly has this tattoo as well, and then he puts it all together because Father Forthill was in the right place at the right time doing
I liked
exactly the
that.
right thing. Is this another
I
one of those like
actually liked that.
God works in mysterious ways things? Because if it is, I feel like that kind of cheapens it if that's the case. Because dude, like it's I don't know. I
I
it didn't
liked
feel
it.
really
Yeah.
just so, like so this may not have been solved if Father Forthill just might not have been doing do it yourself work right there in the t-shirt.
Look, the groundwork has been laid in this series for this type of faith-based magic.
Yeah, God, that's the thing though is
But
that like now that makes it feel cheap for me.
why? Because it's already been established. This is
It,
Sanderson
you know, it just
level
feels like
foreshadowing.
a lot of a lot of the main struggle can and may very well, especially in the future, just be coincidental. Like
Look,
in terms of being able to
that's
solve
how
problems.
every series goes. Like that's how so many things in like the Stormlight Archive or Mistborn go
I
down,
suppose.
or Warbreaker, like,
Yeah,
or the
they do
Wheel of
kind of.
Time. Even like but this is why foreshadowing, like, it would be cheap if it weren't foreshadowed, but it was foreshadowed, and that's why I liked it. And honestly, I liked the scene with Father Forthill quite a lot, where Harry's like, I want to destroy something, and Father Forthill, in again like a very kind of a Catholic philosophical manner, gently moves him away from the destructive nature and into a constructive nature.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
liked that a lot.
I like
I
Father
also
Forthill as a
liked.
character. I
Oh yeah,
love that
Father
dude.
Fort Hill's great. The more we
I
get about
love
him,
that dude. Yeah.
yeah. I liked seeing him kind of dressed down a little bit. I liked the fact that he had him in that scene, not in like just like a cassock and a collar, the way priests
No,
are
he couldn't be because
always
then the
represented.
mystery wouldn't have been solved.
Right.
Like,
But that's a thing. Like Catholic priests don't always walk around in a full cassock and a collar. Like they wear other clothes
yeah, I
sometimes.
suppose. It's just like the only time
Like
we've seen him do that, dress casual, was the one time we
well,
needed him to dress
but we
casual.
have the impression that he does this often when he's over at
Yeah.
uh, the Carpenters, and that was something that resonated with me. So my parents, growing up, basically wherever we lived, my parents went out of their way to make friends with the local priests. We had priests over for dinner often. And so I got used to seeing priests in more casual clothing. Um, Very often they would wear a collar, but they would wear a collar with a t shirt, you know, or
Yeah.
it's not always this very formal wear. And so I could see the Carpenters being a similar kind of family to my family, where they have the priests they're friends with over all the time and in less formal settings. And yeah, I liked that. In fact, I may have just like talked myself into making that my third favorite scene in the book.
Okay. All right. Well, you make a good case for it. You make a good case for
um,
it. Okay.
uh,
I already talked about the
yeah.
duel. It was
Okay.
I already talked about. I love just the fact that Harry really does want to piss off Ebenezer. That was a pretty good one.
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay. So what happened? There was with this supposed prophecy from I'm gonna get butcher this name. Al Sharavas. There was a
uh,
prophecy.
yeah.
Harry was going to die, and I'm using air quotes, if he went after the shroud. But the city would die if he hadn't. So he goes after the shroud anyway, and he lived. Like the only way I can try to explain this, maybe if I was reaching, would be
It
the
was
fact
the
that Shiro
Barabbas
died in
curse.
Harry's. What's that?
Yeah, it was the Barabbas curse, and Shiro took on the curse to.
So Shiro died in Harry's place.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, because it was said that Harry was supposed to be the one dying there after all before Shiro offered himself, but then makes me wonder why the prophecy in the first place. Because going forward now I'm not going to trust any prophecy because I'm like, oh well, unless another subject comes in and takes over. Like I guess the subjects of the prophecy are interchangeable. Like I don't know, it kind of cheapened it for me. I keep using that word. I shouldn't be saying that. Still, I've done a lot of bitching.
No,
I love this
I think
book.
that's fair. I think that's a very fair complaint. We haven't really seen prophecy play a major role and come true in this. I mean, maybe he's just making a point of subverting the trope of prophecy since he's leaning so hard into other tropes in
Sure,
this series.
maybe.
Um, but I just, for me, it just kind of washed over me. Like,
Yeah,
didn't feel like that big a deal.
I feel like if I hear another prophecy